Hello everyone, this is the psychic prediction video for August 2025. So August 2025, I'm titling this video Threat of War in the US because that was the sense that I was getting about what is coming up for August. So some of the things that I'm going to talk about here are Epstein, Donald Trump, world predictions, and how those things tie into the world predictions and what's really going on behind the scenes, as well as usual, I will be doing the Bitcoin predictions and the stock market prediction, as well as discussing Israel and Ukraine, specifically Zelensky, and some situations going around him and his presidency, which I've been talking about for a while now, as well as the general energy of the month of August and some general advice. So last month, actually, currently, right now, as of recording this, it is July 29th. And so when I say last month, I mean the prediction that I made for July before July started. In that previous video, I had discussed how July was going to be about two narratives that are opposing narratives, but both are inaccurate, or there's some sort of lie coming from both sides. And I think that it's become pretty clear that a major concern, I think one of the things that I said was to be careful of believing the mainstream narratives, and that it was going to be a political show, like it's just for show, basically, a lot of what's going on. And the Epstein files has been a big deal for July, and there have been multiple narratives. So when the month started, everyone was saying, well, sorry, not everyone, but I was reading newspaper articles online saying that the Epstein conspiracy theories are a Republican conspiracy being pushed by the the Republican Party, and that there is no such thing as the Epstein list. And this was coming from the liberal side. Ironically, halfway through the month, that all flipped because now Donald Trump's name is mentioned in the Epstein files, or at least that is becoming more of a thing, not just something Elon Musk tweeted or X'd or whatever you want to call it these days. But regardless, there was more information about that coming out and it becoming a bigger deal. And then suddenly Donald Trump flips from saying that, there's all this corruption in it to suddenly it's not a big deal and we need to ignore it completely. But as I've read in the past, going way back, I've been saying this for a long time, that Donald Trump is going to kind of release a lot of these files half-assed and not really do it full justice. I said that before 2025 started. And I also specifically have been talking about how the Epstein files, in particular, he's not really going to push for releasing because he is involved in some of the stuff going on in the background. I've been saying this way before any of this came to the light of the mainstream media. That doesn't mean that he's necessarily doing really horrible things, but I mean, yeah, I would say so to some degree. But really, it's more like a financial thing and a friendship that he had with Epstein. And I was posting about that on my Patreon. You can read more about those details there if you want to get into that. But I also want to mention that way back I did a reading. You could potentially call it a remote viewing, in the sense that I use the remote viewing protocols where you assign numbers, random digits to different names, and you are randomly assigned a random digit number, and you do a reading on that so that you don't actually know what the name is behind the number. So you are blind to the target, meaning you don't know who you're doing a reading on. And in that sense, I followed that protocol, so it was a blind reading. In that reading, I've done multiple readings on Donald Trump and Fauci, not knowing who I was reading. And what's interesting is that when I was reading Fauci, I was really getting the sense that he's very similar to Donald Trump, but on the opposing team. And so this kind of is a good analogy that they both seem to have secrets that they're not able to expose. They may attack each other because they're on opposite teams, but within the whole network, they're still in the same house of cards. So, if they expose too much, the whole house of cards falls and they all lose all of their power. Now, Donald Trump does have 1 foot in the deep state and 1 foot out of the deep state, fighting different factions of the deep state, as I've been saying for a very long time. So don't get me all twisted saying that Donald Trump is evil or he's good. It's really gray. It's really not that he's good, or he is fighting the good fight in some sense, that he's trying to overthrow certain aspects of what he would call the deep state, but at the same time he's also just kind of promoting other aspects of it, which isn't necessarily so good either. So, it's a mixed bag. But either way, there are secrets there. And I said in the last reading that July is going to be a month of releasing secrets and it being a big deal, but that people can't understand or have all of the information all at once because it would just destroy society. And this is exactly what I'm talking about here. We're getting the information, but of course we can't get all of it all at once for multiple reasons, not just the powers at the top losing their power, but also society at the bottom not being able to handle the truth and react to it in a positive way, you could say. So anyways, now the Democrats are saying release the Epstein files after saying that they were fake. So, multiple narratives coming out. They're all false. Donald Trump's narrative is, I'm not on the list. The list doesn't even matter. Another false narrative. It's just, that's what I said would happen. False narratives. Here it is. So, Trump in the past has said about the Epstein files, it is a serious issue and we need to get to the bottom of it. But now, currently, Donald Trump is saying there is no Epstein list and, quote, these files were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden administration. Those are his exact words. I find that pretty hard to believe, especially because I've been reading this situation for a very long time and seeing it before it came to light. So here we are. So anyways, speaking of narratives and, a lot of just these ideas people have, there's also this narrative that Donald Trump is somehow like the perfect savior and has zero faults whatsoever. And that the corruption that's actually going on is that Elon Musk was attacking Donald Trump, and Elon Musk is part of the deep state trying to take down Donald Trump. And I've talked about this on my Patreon in detail and gone over some of what's really going on behind these two people and the forces moving things, moving the chess pieces, so to speak. But basically, before it was popular, I've been saying, as I've just explained, that Donald Trump has a foot in and out of the deep state, kind of in between, in that gray area, working against factions while working for other factions. And the point that I'm trying to bring up here is that Elon Musk is also in a similar situation, but I don't see him being the one who is causing this, who is falsely trying to bring down Donald Trump to hide the truth, because that is also a narrative out there, and I just want to address that and say I really don't see that being the truth from what I've seen. And if you don't care about my opinion, that's fine. You can listen to the rest of this video and judge how accurate you think my readings are based on that. So anyways, Elon Musk is a wild card, and I've described him in the past as more of a contractor, in the sense that he is not loyal to any particular organizations or groups, especially within what would be referred to as the deep state. He is not tied to any particular group. He is tied to the highest bidder, though. So it's basically like he's a contractor. Whoever is going to pay him the most, that's who he goes with, for the most part. And Donald Trump is kind of more loyal to specific groups, especially involving Israel, as I've been saying before this term even started, and it's been very clear that he is very loyal to Israel after all. So, basically, I would like to mention here that Elon Musk is very similar to Donald Trump. I actually did a blind reading on Elon Musk, and I did a blind reading on Donald Trump in the past, and many people commented that it sounded like Elon Musk. And I don't think that's a coincidence that my blind reading on Donald Trump closely resembles Elon Musk, because they're very similar. I will say, though, that neither of them is pure. Neither one is necessarily better than the other, although I do feel that Elon Musk has a little bit more wiggle room, and there is some part of him that does kind of just want to break down the BS in the world and kind of fix things to some degree, but they're both opportunists, and they both are going to, it's not so much necessarily that they want to take down the corruption to make the world a better place. I think on some level they have some aspect of that within themselves, but ultimately what they want to do is take down the corruption so that they can replace that power with themselves and, justify it as they're slightly less corrupt, but they're still upholding the corrupt house of cards regardless. So that's basically the sense I get about both of them. Now, previously in the last prediction, I also had a vision of darkness coming over the U.S. cities, which is kind of similar to the Epstein situation, I guess, the darkness. But I think that this is, and I said that this was kind of metaphoric. It could be kind of literal metaphoric, kind of in between. And I was also saying that it may be good to just avoid large gatherings and sketchy situations in general. Now, for July, we have seen a massive uptick in shootings, which haven't really been such a big deal lately, but suddenly in July they're coming back. It's been pretty rough for the U.S., and I did see this like darkness over the U.S. cities in particular, so it was U.S. specific. And Texas floods, knocked out a lot of power grid. There's the Texas floods are devastating in and of themselves, which could be interpreted as a darkness coming over the country. But along with that, there's been a lot of hackers, and somehow this hasn't really been something that I've been seeing a lot of in the news. But, my followers have been sending me this information, so I thought I'd share some of this with you guys, which is that hackers have exploited a zero-day vulnerability in Microsoft's SharePoint server software, breaching at least 2 U.S. federal agencies, along with state agencies, universities, energy companies, and global telecoms. Also, hackers have been stealing sensitive data, including cryptographic keys and government documents. So hackers have been hacking the government. Doesn't sound too great. In addition, Alaska Airlines has, it says right here, opens new tab resumed. Sorry, I think opens new tab was me copying and pasting it. I don't know what that means. Anyways, it says resumed operations late on Sunday after briefly grounding all of its flights for about 3 hours due to an IT outage, marking the second time it has halted its fleet in just over a year. The U.S. Nuclear Weapons Agency was also breached in a Microsoft SharePoint hack. So, and both of these were due to hacking, as far as the Alaska Airlines incident as well. I don't know about you, but I've personally, on a personal level, been experiencing a lot of internet just not working, where the internet just stops working. You could say, oh, it's like Mercury retrograde and whatnot, and I'm not, that is probably a thing. Astrology is probably influencing this, of course. But regardless, it's been a theme for this month in particular. And there's a lot of reports of power outages in general in July for the U.S. Many have been speculating that these are staged and somehow being done on purpose to create more conflict in the air, to push some sort of political narrative. Again, the political narratives are coming up again. And I do want to say that this is a quote in relation to that I said in my previous video. I said, Trump does not like this in regards to the darkness coming over these cities, and is not part of this. He's not behind it, but he knows who is behind it, and he has to keep his mouth shut. He is in on a secret, and if he were to expose the truth, it would bring down the whole house of cards, some of which he stands upon himself. This is the deep state. And of course, this could also apply to the Epstein thing, because it's very relevant to what happened in July with that. But also, I was saying that this is applying to the darkness coming over the city as well. So, in other words, it seems as though there's something going on behind the scenes Donald Trump is kind of not talking about regarding all these hacks, all these cyber attacks on the U.S. It's just kind of also not in the news as much as I would expect, which is also interesting. So anyways, moving on from there, I've got a lot from last month. But anyways, I think this is the last part of me talking about what I previously said. But anyways, last month I warned about an explosion of some sort in Japan, and that people should stock up on non-perishable food and water if you live in Japan. And at the moment there were some earthquakes going on, but I was seeing like explosions, and I was saying that it was going to get more intense for July. And what happened, let me just read a news headline here. Sakurajima, if that's how you say that. One of Japan's most active volcanoes, located on Kyushu Island, erupted multiple times in July 2025. On July 10th, it launched a massive ash plume 1,800 meters into the air, followed by another eruption on July 17th, with smoke rising to 3,300 meters above the crater. These events covered nearby areas in Kagoshima, with thick volcanic ash disrupting local life and infrastructure. Posts on X described these as huge eruptions, with one noting fire and smoke alongside Tokyo flooding. So also Tokyo is flooding, in addition to that, amplifying a sense of dual disasters in Japan. Another eruption occurred at Shinmoedake volcano in southern Japan on July 3rd, producing a 3,000-meter ash plume that blanketed towns in Kagoshima and Miyazaki. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce these things. This event buried roads, homes, and farmlands in ash, contributing to a perception of chaos. Lots of crazy stuff going on in Japan for sure. So I think that's what that whole warning was about. So hopefully, if you were watching in Japan, you hopefully have some non-perishable food if you need it and some water. So at this point, if you've been watching so far, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. I always do appreciate that. Drop a comment down below. It helps with the algorithms, and it's always good to engage with the audience a little bit. I do post these videos with no ads, so I'm not making any money off of these. So show some support and give it a thumbs up. So Bitcoin. What do I see for Bitcoin? So Bitcoin, as I just posted on my Patreon page, it is really kind of in a weird state right now where it seems as though every time I read it, it looks a little different, especially in the short term. And, you know, timelines shift. The future is never fully set in stone. The future is malleable. That's kind of the beauty in getting a future prediction on a personal level, is because then you can change your future outcome. And so the Bitcoin timeline really seems to be really wobbly right now. But it does seem to me overall that it is probably going to come down into August, either sideways volatility or coming down overall. Previously, I have said for a long time that I see August or around August being a flash crash where Bitcoin just comes down really quick and then comes back up. I've been saying on my Patreon that I don't see that necessarily being the case anymore, but it's more just like a slower downward motion. And the sense that I get is that it's more so going to go down in September, but we could see some of that starting in August. And then around October, it seems that Bitcoin starts to recover. There's a possibility that it could go down even further in October before going back up. But October seems to be approximately where Bitcoin starts to recover. And then from there, we may see new highs by the end of 2025, 2026. Unfortunately, I get the sense it's going to come down like right at the beginning of the year. I don't know. Sometimes, for some reason, at the beginning of the year, it just seems like when I read it, crypto coins, they just want to come down a lot. Or go up a bunch and then come right back down around March. It just seems to be a trend that I see a lot. But anyways, 2026, not great at first, but good by the end, and new highs. And then, of course, as I've been saying for a while now, 2027 or the end of 2026, there could be a major crash that you may want to watch out for. So anyways, the stock market overall for August, I see it being sideways for the most part, but maybe slightly down at first, so it could come down a little bit and then be sideways. And this seems to pretty much go, for the most part, relatively sideways until the start of 2027, as I was talking about with the cryptocurrencies. Similar thing with the stock market, but a quick recovery. And I do see things for the stock market kind of heading down towards 2030. and not really recovering until after 2033. And those years, 2030 to 2033, I just get the sense that's going to be an interesting time period, especially for the stock market and cryptos. So anyways, to more of the world news predictions here. What I was seeing was, when I closed my eyes, I just saw lots of like missiles flying through the air, back and forth, like at each other, like two sides going at it. And I'm not sure if this is literally going to happen or if it's more of a threat in the air. But I definitely get the sense that there's going to be a threat of war involving the US. And this is kind of like a newer development, something not just between Israel or between Ukraine or whatever. But I do see, I don't get the sense that this is going to cause like any sort of major situation with the US, in particular with actual physical explosions in US territory. But I do get that Donald Trump is putting a lot of pressure on other countries, kind of like bluffing in a way, is the sense that I was getting. Like he's bluffing, he's he's like, yeah, we're gonna keep the pressure on them and like put threats on them, or simply not cave in, not resort to the most peaceful way. And it's not so much that I see him not being peaceful, but he's kind of bluffing with a threat back at them, building pressure, and it just seems to build a lot of pressure. I see him on the phone, Donald Trump, on the phone calling up what I would call technocratic corporatists. And these are people who basically want to have power over nation states through corporate power and through technocratic means, which basically means that certain people are elevated to basically make the calls based on merit, based on their knowledge, which sounds good, but a lot of it is also sometimes thought to be more done through technology and like AI and things like that, but also that it can easily lead to tyranny, similar to how a lot of people say that communism can lead to tyranny. Well, so can corporatism, and so can technocratic philosophy as well. I do get the sense that these specific people that Donald Trump is calling and talking to that are involved in that movement support Western U.S. interests and European interests primarily, and it's kind of like they're somewhere in between. They kind of work with all of those types of countries in alignment with them, but it's like more of a globalist operation. But they don't work with all countries. It's not really globalist in that sense, but it is globalist in the sense that they are transcending nations and borders. So anyways, that's who I see Donald Trump calling on the phone, asking for advice around the situation that they are telling him to kind of bluff and bring the pressure up and you know, keep the escalation going for political purposes. I also get the sense that the word Iran may be discussed in their phone call, and I don't know anything more than that. Just that is all. Tensions are high, but they seem to fade away going into September, October, going into further months. I felt that tension just goes away, which is a good sign. I do not get the sense that this is directly related to Ukraine or Israel. I do get the sense that this could involve Muslim-backed countries in particular, and a combination of many countries. It's not just like one country, it's kind of like a gang of countries, is the sense that I get. Colombia came to mind as a possibility that Colombia could also be attacked. Not that they're going to be the ones attacking, but they could be somehow involved in this as they're being threatened or being attacked. I did get the sense of the White House speaking of a terrorist threat, and this also being connected with cyber attacks as well within the new narrative that we'll be seeing in August. I got the sense that there could be some threats in the ocean as well, some sort of escalation, but I did see this being where there could be actual missiles or something shot back and forth, but I do not get the sense that this is going to directly impact like U.S. cities or anything like that. One thing that this reminded me of when it was coming through to me was it reminded me of how Russia has recently in the news had Navy drills where they are focusing on long range strikes, which a lot of people were a little concerned about. It was the drill was called July Storm. So, the word storm doesn't necessarily feel that great. It sounds kind of like an attack or a crazy, chaotic situation. And the fact that they were testing for long range missile strikes, that's just not too reassuring. So I don't know if that's going to be related to the situation that I was seeing or not, but it definitely seems that it could be. So when I tune into Ukraine, I get the sense that Ukraine is not looking too good. And I also get the sense that the news may be skimming over this fact and kind of ignoring it, actually. Actually, months ago, I predicted that Zelensky would become irrelevant in the news after June. And June was, well, it's July 29th as of recording this, but June was the previous, or I guess you could say like almost 2 months ago now. And since then, there was the fallout between Donald Trump and Zelensky, where I actually said that he would become irrelevant before that happened, and then that happened the month that I said that, and then I also said after June it seems like he'll become pretty much irrelevant by that time, and he's kind of out of the news. We have new conflicts, we have new things to focus on. It's not really nobody really cares about Zelensky anymore for the most part. But one thing to mention also is that there have been protests in Ukraine against Zelensky, telling him to step down because of his handling of the situation. And I don't really know the details, but that is something that was in the news. But again, it's been kind of not talked too much about. It's not on the front page of the news, or at least I haven't been seeing it, but that's a thing that's going on. There are protests against Zelensky in Ukraine that were going on in July. So I also predicted in June also that Ukraine could be forced to give up to Russia as soon as September of 2025. Now, this doesn't look too great for Ukraine. But keep in mind, even if it does happen completely where Ukraine is like, we surrender, even if that happens, I still see lots of fighting going on. I've been saying this forever, that it's going to be a 5-year war when it first broke out, at least, and then there's going to be like continued fighting. Even if the government is officially not at war anymore, there will still be factions that are fighting. There will still be organizations, military groups that aren't necessarily part of Ukraine but are affiliated with Ukraine, they will still be fighting regardless, for a good while. So Israel, things continue as they have been. I didn't see too much of a change within all of that. As far as the energy of August, it felt like after a storm, after a hurricane, after some sort of major event, and all of a sudden it's just dead silent and people are just picking up after the storm. That was the feeling I got about August. So it really feels like energetically, it's kind of more like a quiet month in an energetic sense. It doesn't mean it's like literally more quiet. It feels like the energy is calmer, but it's also the recovery phase, and so it's kind of confusing when I talk about energy and then like the 3D physical world and whatnot, because they're a little bit different. So the after effects of July are still leaving people feeling very broken energetically, and on a more physical level, there is the after effects, kind of like aftershocks of what the energy was doing last month, where I talked about the energy being a big deal. I think we've probably been seeing solar flares or Schumann resonance. I don't know. I haven't been paying attention, but I would just assume something like that probably happened for July. But that's the sense of the energy, at least, that I'm getting. And since then, well, heading into August, it's simmering down, but the effects on our physical world are a little bit delayed. They don't just happen right away. It's kind of like, you work out at the gym, build some muscles. The muscles don't build right then and there. The body is a little bit delayed. And the muscles can build for like a couple days or so, I don't know, maybe a week afterwards, where the muscles are still growing from the workout you did. But so in other words, that's very similar to how energy works, where there can be crazy energy, but the effects can happen right then and there, but they can also happen much later on. And so that's going to be kind of what's going on here, where the energy is more calm, but there's still a lot of lingering chaos. And it may sound bad because changing is always difficult, but it's actually more of a positive thing overall because we're increasing the frequency on the Earth. Moving into September, I do see this continuing, where the energy comes back is what I mean, where there's more of a shifting of the frequency of Earth. It starts back up after it gives us a little bit of a break, thank God, because I think we could probably use it, just to not go insane, that is. And basically this is just going to go on for a little while. I see it for the rest of the year, where we're going to have a lot of higher frequencies coming into the Earth, and this basically leading to the new Earth, as they call it sometimes. I've posted on my Patreon page about how this was initially being conducted by ETs from the, I believe, Dogon star, Sirius A, and how that's kind of evolved, and then it was more like an energy that was coming from the Earth herself, and then more recently it's been more so coming from the sun. But regardless, this is all kind of orchestrated as one kind of movement, if you want to call it that, but it's being done with different aspects all kind of at once to kind of help bring us into the manifestation of a world that doesn't self-destruct, and what some people would call the New Earth, if you want to call it that. So moving on to what is this month good for that we're heading into. the first thing that came to me was opening your hand for others as being really important, because people are very beaten down. Oh yeah, there's this feeling of oneness to August where it's like I could hear the like the frequency. It's not even like a chant, but it's almost like the frequency of like like the sound when people chant It was kind of like that, but it wasn't that, but it was almost that. But it just felt like this oneness, like this frequency of just oneness, and it was really powerful in August. And I just feel like we can really tune in August, so it's a good month for that type of thing. Also, self-reflection is also really good for August. I was also getting spirituality as well, basically anything within that field. And of course, I'm going to you would think I'm going to say that every month, but I don't. I don't say those things are good for every month. It's just coming up for this month more so than other months. It's good for every month though. But what I'm trying to say is energetically it resonates more specifically with those things. So, what is the month bad for? It's kind of a bad month energetically, generally speaking, of course. These are all generalizations. But generally speaking, it's a bad month for pushing ahead, and I saw a vision of someone tripping over their shoelaces and falling. So it's just not a good month to try and push through. Some months are great for pushing through. This is just energetically not aligned for that type of thing as much. Of course, there will always be exceptions. Trying too hard to make money is something to watch out for, as maybe a bad habit that you might have. You might want to watch out for that. Some self-awareness. Make sure you don't do that. Okay, not only trying too hard to make money can backfire, but also overeating was showing up as something that could be something to watch out for August. Also, having high expectations, and even in a spiritual sense of expecting yourself to be spiritually enlightened or whatever, even that type of expectation, I was just getting the sense that you don't want to push too hard. You just want to be where you're at and just be okay with where you are and not be trying to achieve something more. Not that that is a bad thing to do, it's just that this month's energy isn't necessarily supporting that type of activity as much as other months would. You should still, aim for the stars on some level. But regardless, I'm just telling you the energy of the month. So when I asked for the general advice, what came through was just very simply, take it easy. Just take August easy. Tend to your wounds and be soft. And that was the advice. Now, ironically, and it's not really that ironic because I kind of read the energy and, see where things are at before I make plans like this, but I am teaching a psychic development class through guided meditation. It's a course, and you can sign up for it. I will leave a link below this video for you to sign up for that if you would like. It starts very soon, actually, August 3rd. You do need to watch the first class for free. It is a free first class for anyone who wants to watch that. But you do have to watch it and practice it 3 times before you watch the next class, which will be recorded and which I will be sending out August 3rd. This is basically just a guided meditation, but it's done in a very particular way to make you become aware of your own auric field, your own energy, and start tuning in and noticing the difference between your energy and other people's energy. And this gives way to the next course that I teach after that, if you want to continue taking classes from me, where I have been teaching some people how to do psychic readings. Basically teaching people to do what I do. Besides for that, I have lowered the price on my Patreon page. So if you were paying the higher price, you have now gone down and you will be paying less. I just got the sense that people are struggling in the world, and when I was tuning in, I think last month I even said this, where I was tuning into to everyone, and I just got the sense that especially the people watching my channel in particular were showing up as struggling financially, and I'm feeling that this month is also going to be like that. And I just was like, well, I'll just lower the prices a little bit. And so you can join my Patreon for as little as $5 or for free, actually, because I have a free membership and then I have a free 7-day trial, and you can easily cancel with like 3 clicks. You can cancel before you get charged. But if you do that, make sure that you don't cancel until you're done actually using it, because you will lose access to the search bar after you cancel the membership. Even if it still gives you access to it, you won't have access to the search bar. I don't like it. That's just the way it's set up. But anyways, the search bar, you can find hundreds of crypto coins if you sign up for the higher tier. And with the free trial, you will have access to my thoughts on AI, which I have recently posted. Well, I'll just say in the last month of July, I've posted about AI, I've posted about Ghislaine Maxwell, I've posted about the Epstein files, I've posted about the economic situation, and even these ideas floating around about how you can get away with not paying taxes. I've addressed that, which, I'm not so optimistic on it as some people seem to be. But anyways, I think it's a little more complex and a lot less cut and dry than some people make it out to be. But anyways, also I go into reading about secret societies and how those kind of work behind the scenes, and how much do they really know. And the sense that I got, I'll just tell you right now, is that they know some truth. They know some spiritual truth as well. But just like any religious organization, they get carried away with their own dogma. And just like any nation, they also have their own propaganda. And so they get a little carried away by their own dogma and their own propaganda. And so that can skew their perception a lot. So a lot of the information coming from secret societies, it is on some level higher truths, but on another level mixed with their own BS. So also I talk about metal music and how listening to metal can be good and bad, and the spiritual effects and the energetic effects within the auric field that has on people or can have on people. Also depends on exactly what you're listening to or how much you listen to of it, or kind of where you're coming from when you're listening to it. But anyways, I dive into the energetics of that on my Patreon page as well. Also the ETs and the Dog Star, as I brought up. I do blind readings, meaning I don't know who I'm reading. I just did Tony Rodriguez. So Tony Rodriguez is a secret space program. He says he worked in the secret space program. Anyways, very interesting character. He's one of my favorite secret space program people. Benjamin Fulford, you would call him a conspiracy theorist. I don't say conspiracy theory in the sense that it's not true. I say conspiracy theory as in the sense that theories can be false or true. I also did you could say a remote viewing on a remote viewer, ironically, which is interesting. A little bit of insight in how all that works energetically. And of course, I talk about Donald Trump a lot on my Patreon page. I would call it a psychic encyclopedia, meaning that you should use the search bar. In other words, so use the search bar because I have tons of stuff there, just like an encyclopedia, and you can just type in a name It's possible I've done a reading on them. If I haven't, you can request that I do a reading, and I will add it to my like hundreds of names with random numbers assigned to it, so I don't know who I'm reading when I pick it. And besides for that, I have psychic readings available. You can get a one-on-one psychic reading with me. It's $160 for an hour of a one-on-one session, just you and me through video, or you can choose to just do it over the phone if you prefer. If you want a cheaper option, of course, you can get the written reading, which is only $55 for one question, but one question is 2 to 3 paragraphs or more. So it's like a lengthy email response. And if you want more than one question, then the following questions are as cheap as $45 for additional questions. So check that out. Links below this video. Give this video a thumbs up if you have not. Subscribe for monthly predictions every month before the month. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.